Toni Storm, Saraya and Ruby Roho are the Outcasts, a trio in the AEW women's division, and a top trio at that. Ruby Roho has wrestled for promotions all over the world, and Sarya is your current women's champion. However, despite being made up of three of the top women in the company, the Outcasts' run in AEW has been less than stellar, hasn't connected with the fans, and it's already looking like the group may be ending very soon. So let's talk about the Outcasts. Before AEW, Saraya, Toni Storm and Ruby Roho were all obviously part of the WWE, where they all had varying degrees of success within the company. Saraya worked in the WWE as Paige, being signed when she was only 20 years old, and she came into the WWE at a time where women's wrestling was starting to be taken more seriously. She won the NXT Women's Championship, being the inaugural belt holder, and a few months afterwards, she would also win the Divas Championship, and she would hold both belts. She'd trade the Divas title and win it once more in a legendary feud with AJ Lee. However, a combination of injuries and a turbulent life outside of the ring stalled Paige's WWE career. She would return from a major neck injury at the end of 2016 with new allies of Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. However, just months after returning from her neck injury, it was re-injured in a botch during a live event, and WWE refused to clear her, and she was forced into an early retirement from in-ring competition. She'd stick around as an on-screen personality for a few years, but it was clear her heart was still set on being a wrestler, and she would let her WWE contract expire and depart from the company in 2022. Toni Storm's WWE career saw much similarities with Paige's, starting off on a high with major success, but slowly but surely fading out from the card. Toni Storm's first introduction to a WWE audience was in the Mae Young Classic in 2017, the very first one, where she made it to the semi-finals, but it was the next year in the second Mae Young Classic that Toni Storm would go all the way and would win the tournament after defeating Io Shirai in the final. And shortly after this, she would make it to the finals of a tournament for the NXT UK Women's Championship, and while she would lose in the final to Rhea Ripley, she'd beat Rhea for the title about 3 months later and hold the NXT Women's Championship. And Toni Storm was your NXT UK Women's Champion for 230 days before losing it to Kaylee Ray, and after failing to regain it, she would debut in NXT on USA. And if we're being honest about Toni Storm's NXT run, nothing happened on it at all. Like, nothing. They did nothing with her. Regardless though, she'd make it to the main roster and would debut on the 23rd of July 2021 episode of SmackDown, confronting Zelina Vega, who she would lose to in a 2-minute match a couple weeks later, and then she was just taken off TV for no reason, and once again, WWE just couldn't think of anything to do with her. Between the match with Zelina in July and December of that year, she would wrestle a whole once more on SmackDown. Just once. She would actually get into a feud with women's champion Charlotte Flair at the end of the year, which featured the infamous segment where she was pied and embarrassed. Toni Storm and Charlotte would have a match on TV for the title, which Toni lost, and after this, Toni had clearly had enough, as on December 29th, 2021, she requested her WWE release and was granted it immediately. Ruby Roho had the longest in-ring run in the WWE out of the three, where she worked under the name of Ruby Riott. She made her WWE debut at NXT TakeOver Orlando 2017 and looked to be a big name in the NXT women's division. However, after only about 6 months in NXT, she was hotshotted to the main roster before she could even do anything in NXT, so that she could form the Riott Squad alongside Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan. And as popular and as good as the Riott Squad were as a trio, unfortunately they were always just sort of a jobber group. Ruby had a couple of title matches up against Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair, with the latter being a very underrated match, but alas, she of course lost both of those matches, and her and Liv Morgan had a little tag team run and went for the tag belts, but once again to no avail, and she was released in June 2021 as part of the COVID budget cuts. And of course, all three women would make their way to AEW and debut at different times. Ruby Roho debuted as the Joker at AEW All Out 2021 in the Casino Battle Royal. Toni Storm debuted on the March 30th, 2022 edition of Dynamite in the Owen Hart tournament, and Saraya debuted on AEW Grand Slam 2022 in September, and shortly after announced that she was out of retirement and would be wrestling again soon. However, it wouldn't be until the build-up to Revolution 2022 2023 though that these three would finally cross paths, and it all started when Toni Storm lost her AEW Women's Championship to Jamie Hayter at Full Gear 2021. And while she was feuding with Jamie Hayter, Saraya was feuding with Britt Baker, who is of course aligned with Jamie Hayter. This led to Toni Storm and Saraya crossing paths and forming a team. And on the January 18th, 2023 edition of Dynamite, Toni Storm and Saraya would turn heel shockingly when they attacked Willow Nightingale and denounced the AEW homegrown talent in the women's division. This led to a triple threat match at Revolution 2023 as Jamie Hayter would defend her title against Saraya and Ruby Soho. Ruby Soho had aligned herself with the homegrown talent, however she had also received interest to join up with Toni Storm and Saraya and create a trio. And after Jamie Hayter would successfully retain her title in the triple threat match at Revolution, that's exactly what would happen when Ruby Soho turned heel at the end of the match, attacking Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker and aligning herself with Saraya and Toni Storm. Toni Storm, Saraya and Ruby Soho would officially dub themselves as the Outcasts and put the women's division on notice. They had a disdain for AEW homegrown talent and felt like they were bigger stars than all of the other women. The Outcasts would continue to feud with the homegrown talent of AEW, namely Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter, Sky Blue and Willow Nightingale. And every women's match on TV would kind of be the same thing. It would be an Outcast versus a homegrown talent, and regardless of the result, the Outcasts would attack them at the end of the match, leading to more homegrown women coming out and a big brawl or a chase ensuing. It was pretty much a weekly routine. At Double or Nothing 2023, we'd see a rematch between Toni Storm and Jamie Hayter for the women's title, and this time Toni Storm would best Jamie Hayter and she would win the match and she would regain the AEW Women's World Championship to become a two-time champion. Toni Storm would defend the title successfully against Sky Blue on Dynamite, Willow Nightingale at Forbidden Door, and Taya Valkyrie on Battle of the Belts, and while she was doing this, Ruby Soho was on her own side quest as she looked to win the Owen Hart Memorial Cup. She defeated homegrown rivals Britt Baker and Sky Blue in the quarter and semi-finals respectively, before meeting another rival in Willow Nightingale in the final, with Willow coming out on top. And Saraya throughout all of this, well, she had that mixed tag with Chris Jericho against Britt Baker and Adam Cole, I guess. I don't know, Saraya didn't really do anything during this period other than hang out with them and be annoying. Toni Storm would lose the title to Hikaru Shida on the 2nd of August Dynamite, ending her reign at just over 2 months, and a match would be set for All In for the women's title, a 4-way match between Hikaru Shida, Britt Baker, Saraya and Toni Storm. And as for Ruby Soho, she was facing Chris Statlander at All Out the next week for the TBS title. However, leading up to these matches, the cracks in the Outcast were beginning to show. Specifically Toni Storm, who looked to be on a new path as a solo act as she debuted a new Hollywood noir actress gimmick, which she has been brilliant in so far. And at All In, after Toni Storm accidentally took out Saraya's mother, Saraya attacked Toni Storm, and when Ruby Soho ran out, she was also attacked by her Outcast teammates. And while Saraya would go on to win this match and win the women's title, it looked like the Outcasts were over. Or were they, as the Outcasts would appear on TV again as a group like nothing ever really happened. And while Toni Storm seems to slowly but surely be separating herself from the group, the Outcasts still haven't officially broken up. But the Outcasts have just not connected with the fans whatsoever, and I'm sure most people are probably just wishing for them to break up already. These three are definitely more suited to being solo acts. Saraya as women's champion can easily go on her own path. Ruby Soho is someone who can wrestle every week and doesn't need a group around her, and Toni Storm has one of the most compelling characters in the division right now, and they need to explore that more with her being a solo act and chasing the women's title. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe for more Toni Storm content.